Good morning. Shabbat Shalom. Diane, you're muted.
I just did that so that noises from here wouldn't go over the.
Okay. It's okay. We have not started yet. How are you?
Okay.
Shalom.
How are you?
Good. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Hi, Ellen. Shabbat Shalom. How are you, Ellen?
I'm great.
Good. So, if you're planning to share the screen, you should be able to. You want to just try now for a second? Just share something. If you
I have to get rid of the junk that's on my desktop first, or else you'll see everything I've done in the last 2 days. That's all. Okay. You see
yes,
that?
yes, that's good. So, as long as you have permission to, you are able to share, that's good. Excellent. Thank you.
I have that whole thing there.
Yeah, you just want to make like a full screen, maybe.
But then I won't be able to see everything else, right? Will I be able to see people
Yes,
to call on them? Yeah. Okay.
you'll be able to see maybe not everybody, but
So this you can't see big enough?
it's big enough for me. This is good. Is it big enough for everybody?
It's good for me.
Yeah, that's
I
good.
think if I make it full screen, it will overlap me being able to see who to call on.
Okay, but yeah, we can see that. So if it works for you, it works for us.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Perfect.
You are.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Hi, Gail. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. And you?
Well, thank God. You know, thank God. Everybody's healthy.
No blizzards. There's no big winds. No power outages.
Really? Oh, yeah.
We're good. It's just gray.
The sun's supposed to come out
Tomorrow.
tomorrow, right?
Bet you about $1 that tomorrow there'll be sun. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know. What's the temperature today? I didn't look outside.
20
But
something.
I am going to run and get a sweater, so I'll be speaking
Okay.
in my own home. So just one moment, I'll be here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cold. But it's
I
still good to.
think you've been in colder weather, Canterbury.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. I walked yesterday like 4 miles, so
Wow.
on my urban trail, AUBU,
Auburn.
Auburn, my Auburn trail. I can't pronounce it, but I walked there. Hi,
Hello.
Irene. Hi, Alan. Hi, Rebecca.
Hello.
Hi, Rebecca.
Rebecca is changing from Torah this morning, and Alan is giving the Var Torah, Torah discussion.
We're leading. We're just collaborating together, all of us.
Yep.
Right, so we will be collaborating. So thank you so much for offering that, and it's always good to engage people. And I will ask some of you if you would like to read some readings that on the screen, so we can hear voices, other voices than me. It will be English, no, not Hebrew.
Where are our Sim Shalomers?
Yeah, well, I'm sure they'll get here before Sim Shalom. Rebecca, would you like to lead also us in like via Hafta? Do you mind?
Sure.
Okay, great. So when you see the screen, you just chant it.
Okay.
Great, thank you so much. Hi, Carol. Hi, Wendy.
Hi.
So it's
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. It's so
Shabbat
good.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. So good to be here with everybody after a tough week. And but it's good that we have Shabbat where we can disconnect and recharge batteries and re-energize and just break up from the routine and just pray for good things.
And we're making progress because they added on to people who qualified for vaccinations, the 1B people.
The one word?
1B. Oh, sorry.
The people who are over 75
Mhm.
and some other categories, people who teach, I think, I don't know, I look, but the fact that they're going into other pots of people
It's real-
is encouraging. Those are the people who don't go to a medical facility, but go to a pharmacy to get their shot.
That's
You
good.
don't have to just go to a pharmacy. They're opening up the venues where you can get it. It can also be a doctor's network.
Right.
And I heard or read that on Monday, the state, New York State, is opening up a website for trying to reserve a date for yourself, and that'll happen
I think you have to make,
supposedly.
Rebecca knows.
you
Rebecca
have to,
knows.
you have to make appointments and you can do it through the New York State website. It'll either be pharmacy or actually, I think they'll be doing mass vaccination sites and potentially health departments too. But I think that's
Mhm.
still up in the air.
But you have to be 75, right, before you can make an appointment?
Before you can be in that category, there may be
Right.
other categories like
So you have to be
teachers.
75 first, yeah. Okay.
But maybe when things get rolling, they'll enlarge the category, keep going. into
Yeah.
new-
That's what I'm hoping for. That's my plan.
Before we're 75.
Yeah, Rebecca, is the category for is the category for teachers? Or
Yeah,
like-
I think that's going to be so right now it's 1A, 1B. Let me see. I know the teachers are in a category. I don't know if they're considered 1B or
TV.
I
hang
saw
on.
them in 1B.
I think you're right. I think that is
But
considered sort of
I
an
think you're
essential.
expanding things because Liz told me that they had the 1A category with healthcare workers, but even if you were just working remotely and you were a healthcare worker, they put that in that category also, even though you never have any contact. So,
Hmm.
um,
What about clergy? What category is that?
oh, well, only rabbis are teachers? No?
I have,
I mean, you,
yeah, that I don't
I'll
know.
write your recommendation.
Let's see, COVID.
Right, but I'm sure there is some clergy also falls under some category because a lot of priests, all the Christian clergy also um, need to be vaccinated.
Yeah, so here we go. Category 1B includes people 75 up, 75 and older, teachers, police, firefighters, and public transit.
Right.
Oh, Kendra Braun, you need to be a bus driver.
There you go.
Well, don't
Or a police officer.
retirement job. And so
Wonderful. Okay, I'm applying for a job.
I think you would make a good police officer.
Me? Thank you. Is it a compliment?
I'm looking to see where clergy is located.
Well, thanks, Rebecca. Well, here's Abasim Shalomer.
Good to see some old faces back today.
Yes.
getting older by the moment.
Not rush it.
Yeah, but I'd like to be 75.
For a minute.
I'd like to rush a couple of years. Right, a minute, just while I sign up.
You want to be 75 for 3 years till you get there, Jackie.
I know. I'd like it for a minute. Hey, I can say what I like. Not that anybody will let me do it.
Okay, so just waiting. Rebecca, do you think should we start, or you want to just say something?
Haven't found anything yet.
So maybe at the end of the service we can continue this conversation
Yep.
because it's 37 and we got more people. So we'll start with Matovu. So let's ask everybody to mute, right? Everybody, let's mute because we don't want any feedback on the sound. Okay, so yeah, let's mute. So everybody good? Everybody mute? Okay, great. Israel, Well, this was Matova by Danny Messing, and we are so excited that he'll be with us in about 3 weeks. His first appearance is January 27th. He will lead us in Kabbalistic Seder for Tu B'Shvat, and will be very exciting. I'm very excited. And you look for publicity and description of the program. Jackie, would you like to read this, please?
Praise to you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before you, before your throne of glory, that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and stand before you.
Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofecho Bastaru Mafliya La'asot. We praise you, Holy One, for wondrous acts of creation and healing. And just a reminder, so whenever you read, just make sure you mute yourself back. Thank you. We continue with the Lahai Neshama, and please join us. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi Ehorai. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi Continue with Psalm 150. So if you have any instruments, I would like to bring up any, maybe maracas or anything, spoons, metal spoons also work. And please join us. Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Birkiyazda, Hallelujah, Big Borata, Hallelujah, Keragula, Kora Haile Shamate, Hallelujah, 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 Kora Haile Shamate, Hallelujah, 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 Beteka Shafar, Hallelujah, Benevel Bechinar, Hallelujah, Betzav Machal, Hallelujah, Beimini Velgaf, Kol HaNeshamate, Hallelujah, 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 Kol HaNeshamate, Hallelujah, 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 B'tziltzili Shama, Hallelujah, B'tziltzili Troa, Kol HaNeshamate, Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Arlene, would you like to read, please? You just need to unmute.
She calling in.
Praised are you, sovereign of wonders, crowned in adoration, delighted in song, eternal majesty.
Okay, thank you. We join together in Hatzikadosh. Yitkadal v'yitkadash merava, Belmadi berak yirudei v'emli malchutei, Becha Okay, so I'm sorry to stop. Arlene, let's mute.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It just gives feedback. Thank you.
Do it. No. Can't get it done.
Okay, I will mute you. Hold on. I will mute you. You're fine. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabba Belmadi b'rachirote v'yamlich malchutei B'chayechonu v'yomechon U'chayedecho bet Israel Bagala bagala U'vizman kari v'imeru Amen. Yehesh me Rabba mevorach Le'olam olam me'almaya yitbarach Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitrama v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmer kudesha brichu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'yimeru Amen. Be right if you're able for Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed. Lisa Altman, would you like to read? You can read in English or Hebrew, whatever you're comfortable.
Or Chadash al Tzion Tahir Beneke Kulanu Mehira Laoro. May you shine a new light on Zion, and may we soon be privileged to share in that light. Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer HaOrot. Or praise to you, Adonai, creator of the cosmic lights.
Thank you. And Liz, would you like to read?
Bring us peace from the four corners of the earth. Lead us with upright pride to the land that is ours. You are a God of miracles and wonders. From all the peoples of the earth, you sought us out and brought us near to your great enduring truth. So with love, we acknowledge and proclaim that you are one.
Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai haboher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Our praise to you, Adonai. You have singled out your people Israel with love. And together, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. And please be seated. And Rebecca, would you like to chant for us?
Sure. Sure. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi asher anochi mitzvah yom alevavecha v'shinatam levanecha v'dibarta bam B'shiftecha b'beitecha u'v'lektecha b'derech u'b'shapecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam li'ot al yadecha v'hayu l'totafot b'neinecha u'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha Leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kadoshim le'Elohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Okay, so we'll ask somebody to read. Diane, would you like to read? Just unmute yourself. I'm gonna. Okay. Unmute one more time. You have to unmute. Diane, you have to unmute.
There we go. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Emet, there is no place where you are not. Even in the wilderness, there is your word. Emet, that pen strokes of lightning, white fire, black flame, stir the soul's passion, guide our sacred way. True and enduring is Torah. Your truth for us is certain and established now and forevermore. Like Moses, Miriam, and all Israel, we sing out and rejoice.
Thank you. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. שירו חדשו שיבחו יעולים, לשמחו שפת היום. יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. יאי לי 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 יאי לי 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 צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ופרענו ממך יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני God Israel. Gail, would you like to lead us in reading?
There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we cared nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace.
Thank you. It was beautiful. We're entering Tefillah, the center of our prayer, center of our service. Please rise if you're able to. Adonai sefat yiftachu fi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imateinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah, El Hagadol Hagibor v'Chanara, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Koneh Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומשיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה הכל, אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד חג השם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו, לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומידו מהלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן עד עליון הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה הכל. And join me with the Kiddusha. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקורא זה וזה בהמור, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות, מלוא הארץ כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני, אדוננו מאדיר שמך בארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו מלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון לדור ודור. הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים גירושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. And please be seated. Continue as we rejoice on Shabbat with Yismechu. Please join me. And if you have any instruments, I also would like to hear you through the screen that you're playing, maybe some maracas or anything that you have. Or clap your hands. Shabbat, olam yitbeu, ויתענגו מטובך שבת, וישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת בכורי, עונג שבת, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת בכורי, עונג שבת, והשביעי רצית בו וקידשת שבת, עמדת ימים אתה קראת שבת, שומרי 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 שבת בכורי, עונג שבת, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת בכורי, עונג שבת. זכר מעשה וראשית שבת, זכר למעשה וראשית שבת, אוי מלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת בכורי, עונג שבת, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת בכורי, עונג שבת. Marilyn, Rosen, would you like to read?
May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day, and may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai, hamachazir shechinato leTzion. Blessed are you, whose divine presence is felt again in Zion. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha olechana ele hodot. Blessed are you, Adonai, whose goodness deserves thanks and praise. This is our prayer for peace. Peace that desperately needed, especially these days. Sim Shalom. Please join me. And we're blessed with so many people this morning. So I will be a bit quiet behind this screen. So looking forward to their voices and responses. Sim Shalom, Tova ubracha, Chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, barcheinu yitzreinu kulanu kechad, be'or panecha, ki be'or panecha natot elanu, Adonai Eloheinu.
Shalom.
Sim Shalom, Tova ubracha, Hein v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, Torat chayim ve'achavat chesed, ve'achavat chesed, tzedaka ubracha ve'rachamim, v'chayim ve'shalom.
Sim Shalom.
Shalom.
Sim Shalom, Tova ubracha, Chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, v'tov b'necha levarech et amcha Yisrael, b'chol et v'chol shah, b'shlomecha.
Sim Shalom.
Sim Shalom, Tova ubracha, Chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael lamecha. Well, thank you for the Sim Shalom choir. We'll continue with the silent prayer. Just take a few moments to reflect on your own thoughts. We continue with the prayers for healing. We pray for those who are in need of healing in our community. Mark Friedman, Elizabeth Friedman, Shana Esther Batruchel, Joel Shemaskin, Haya Necha Batriva Leah, Simon Brightman, Barbara Bayer, Katriel Perachia, Ben Herschel, Lazar Shoshana, Sally Graf, Sarah Bat Abraham Vesara, William Fawcett, Alan Skirker, Chaim Ben Sarah, Dina Yehoshua, Laura Braun, Shulamit Buza, Raymond Condon, Susan Sultan Tobias, Pamela Labide Blackwell, Sandra Vallet, Barbara DeCaria, Eric Weiner, Marie Eichner, Kim Stenger de Liesel, Ralph Bookbinder, Leona Johnson, Eileen Kaplan, Patrick Doherty, Miriam Batella, Lynn Fragan, Yoni Fine, Stephen Brandt, William Shamish, Rini Feingold, Marsha Blank, Nancy Cohen, Batya Shena, Batshena Rivka Mordechai, Rachel Shapira, Alla Engert, Meredith Cabanis, Ader, Caitlin Hughes. Anybody have other names? Please unmute yourself and add the name of the person.
Aaron Nehemiah ben Sarah, Gerald Drea bat Sarieta, Basha bat Ita.
Ernest Lockauer, Christy Supola.
Matt Jones, Jason Wieland.
We pray for everybody who needs healing of body, healing of spirit. We pray for front workers who are risking their lives every day to protect us. We pray for all of us after the events of last week to give all of us healing and inspiration as we move forward to hopefully a good year with good news and unity and healing. Please join me with Misha Berach. We continue with Torah reading and Torah discussion. We are very fortunate to have a Torah reader this morning. Rebecca Dreyer will be chanting from the Torah. So before she chants, let's recite the bracha together. As I mentioned last week, we have a Torah chanting club on Sundays. And many of you are in the club, and people from Torah Chanting Club will be chanting every Saturday from the Torah. Last week we had Marie Pellet, and this week we have Rebecca. Okay, so please, you can unmute and let's recite the blessing together. But don't forget to mute back so Rebecca can chant from the Torah. Baruch hu et Adonai hamorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vaed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et
Torato.
Baruch Adonai noten haTorah. So good to hear your voices. Okay, we're gonna make sure we mute back. Okay.
Amen. Va'ele shemo b'nei Yisrael haba'im Mitzrayma et Yaakov ish uveto ba'u Ruvain Shimon Levi v'Yehuda Issachar Zevulun v'Yamin Dan v'Naftali Gad v'Asher V'hayu kol nefesh yotzei yerech Yaakov shivim nafesh v'Yosef haya b'Mitzrayim.
Okay, Yashar Koch. I will recite together the bracha after, and we can unmute. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam natan b'torteinu. Baruch atah Adonai
Noten
HaTorah. Okay, let's mute back. Well, I'm going to pass the floor to Ellen Goldenberg, who graciously agreed to lead us in Torah discussion. And look how many people we have. We have 20 people. Wow. Yashar Koch to everybody. I guess this is a good message to us. We need to have more Torah readers and more people to discuss Torah, right? So Ellen, it's your floor. You just need to unmute yourself.
We'll do it that way. I'll just keep my finger on there. So I prepared a summary first, so we see the overall purpose of this portion. And while we're talking about the first part of the portion, the question I'd like you to be thinking of is, what do we know about Moses? What does the Torah tell us? And what's left out that rabbis later on had to fill in with midrashic stories? Because there are probably more midrashic stories in this portion than any other portion that there is, because the Torah doesn't tell us too much. So the summary of the Parsha Shemot is that a new king of Egypt makes slaves of the Hebrews and orders male children to be drowned in the Nile. And a Levite woman places her son Moses in a basket on the Nile, where he is found by the daughter of Pharaoh and raised in Pharaoh's house. Moses flees to Midian after killing an Egyptian. Moses marries Zipporah, the daughter of Midian priest, and they have a son named Gershom. God calls Moses from the burning bush and commissions him to free the Israelites from Egypt. Moses and Aaron request permission from Pharaoh for the Israelites to celebrate a festival in the wilderness. Pharaoh refuses and makes life even harder for the Israelites. That is what's in this juicy portion, which probably could be a course in itself. We already heard Rebecca chant this part, and I won't read all the names again because it's just time consuming. But I do want you to look at number 5 that says the total number of people that were of Jacob's issue came to 70, Joseph already being in Egypt. That's a very good point about the number 70. Does anybody have any idea what the significance of 70 is? I can't do the work myself. Anybody? I can only see 5 people, so unmute yourself if you have something to say.
Were there not 70 scholars or priests or something like that who redacted portions of the Torah? Or am I way off?
Right? I don't know that to be true, but if you say it, it must be.
Wasn't it the Septuagint or something? Which was 70? I thought they made the laws, was the governing body
Okay,
no?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
If you say it, I would accept that. That's your understanding of one of the numbers of 70.
They say there are 70 names of God.
There are 70 names of God. Anything else? Go way back to the Tower of Babel. There were 70 nations or languages that had to be put together. Anything else that comes to mind? Well, 70 also indicates not a particular number, but it also indicates that the complete nation was there. It's a symbol of the whole thing. It's like we might say a gazillion is just a really lot of a number. And the term elef in Hebrew is not just a number, it means a battalion. It has other meanings. And so the total number of people that were of Jacob's issue came to 70. In other words, every single person of that family was back together again, because where had Jacob been? Sitting back in Canaan. Okay, and this was a symbol that they had been all to put back all together. Okay, anybody else have something? I can only see 5 people, so you got to unmute and speak up if you have something else to say. Okay, so Gail Ferrioli had agreed to read the section 2 that comes forward after that little part about names. Is Gail there?
I am. Joseph died and all his brothers and all that generation, but the Israelites were fertile and prolific. They multiplied and increased very greatly, so that the land was filled with them. A new king arose of Egypt who did not know Joseph, and he said to his people, "Look, the Israelite people are much too numerous for us."
Okay, does anybody see a change in how the Jewish people are referred here? Let's go back a minute. And it said, these are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob. And now we're talking about Israelites. They have a brand new way of being thinking of, that these are the Hebrew people. And they were referred to in ancient times as Hebrew people. Okay. What about this new king? And what do we know about Joseph? Anything about Moses? Anything yet? We know nothing about him, just that a new king of Egypt. And the word for king in Hebrew is Pharaoh. Yeah. Pharaoh. Just pop right in. It's a discussion. I'm not teaching a class or giving a drash.
But it uses the word melech.
Correct. That's the Hebrew word for king. And the Egyptian word for king is Paro. Okay.
But why doesn't the Torah just say Paro?
Maybe that was a title and not just a generic. Okay. Inserted here, and I wanted to not go into the detail of this part because we could have spent a whole hour just talking about how Moses was born and the decree to kill Hebrew male babies, and Moses being set in a basket by the edge of the Nile River, and Miriam watched as the daughter of Pharaoh discovered him and took him to the place to raise him there. Miriam arranged for Moses' mother, Yocheved, to be a wet nurse in the palace until Moses reached the age of weaning. One source that I read said that she didn't raise him in the palace, she actually took him back home. And that he didn't go back to the palace until he had grown up, whatever we think that means. So this is the first mention of Moses's birth. Do we know anything about his mother? Do we know her name?
Yocheved.
Her name was Yocheved, and the father's name was? Anybody?
Yitro was the father-in-law.
Was the father-in-law. So
I'm guessing we don't know.
Okay, so the father's name was Amram, and we know that he was a Levite, and the Levites in Egypt were a class of priests and were very well respected. And one thing that the Torah doesn't tell you is that the priestly class, even of the Hebrews, did not have to work. They didn't have to do slave labor. That's something they don't tell you here. Maybe they just assumed that everybody knew it. Okay. If anybody needs to go back to the text, just let me know. Okay. Is there someone who would like to read this section? I had two volunteers reading. I can't see you unless you say hello. I can only see 5 people.
This is Jackie. I'll read.
Okay.
Let us deal shrewdly with them so they may not increase. Otherwise, in the event of war, they may join our enemies in fighting against us and rise from the ground. So they set the taskmasters over them to oppress them with forced labor, and they built garrison cities for Pharaoh, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they were oppressed, the more they increased and spread out, so that the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. The Egyptians ruthlessly imposed upon the Israelites the various labors that they made them perform. Ruthlessly, they made a life bitter for them with harsh labor at mortar and bricks and with all sorts of tasks in the field.
All right. So the question is, what information do we get here that we need to understand who Moses is? Because even though Genesis has nothing to do with Moses, we call our Torah the 5 books of
Moses.
So what do we learn here about the Egyptians? Do we learn anything about Moses? We know that he was from a Levite class. Do we learn anything? Why were they so afraid? Why were the Egyptians so afraid of the fact that the Jewish people were growing? You have to speak up because I can only see 5 people.
They were afraid of war, that there'd be more soldiers to fight against them.
And why were they so afraid? I mean,
because they had made life so hard for the Israelites. So if you oppress somebody, they will eventually rise up.
Correct. Where did the Hebrew people live? Anybody know?
They lived amongst themselves. They really didn't live among the Egyptians. So
Correct.
I think if you see an insular people suddenly growing more numerous, it kind of raises red flags. We can argue about whether or not it should raise red flags, but to the Egyptians it did.
To the Egyptians it did, but for a very important reason. Where did they strategically live? Anybody know?
Mm-mm.
They lived in the land of Goshen, which was the Nile Delta, up at the top by the Mediterranean. The Nile isn't such really a long river. And what they were asking them to build were actually fortifications around their important places of worship. It wasn't that they were just building things. They were fortifying themselves. So it's kind of a two-edged sword, no pun intended, that the Hebrews lived in the Nile Delta, which was the entrance to the Nile River, and yet they were called out to build fortifications for the Egyptians. It kind of just goes together.
There's something else that's interesting here, okay?
Yeah.
The definition of slave and what a slave was in those days, it doesn't say that they were enslaved here, at least here. It talks about them putting taskmasters over them. And if we look back at biblical times, the definition of slavery is very different than the definition that we're accustomed to at this time. So the question is, were they basically just an oppressed minority, who were working for, business owners, so to speak, or a government that oppressed them, but they still had some freedom? Or were they slaves in the manner of which we believe slaves were, okay, which are people who were owned? And as slaves, if they were owned, they were only owned by the Pharaoh. I never read anything that said individual Egyptians owned any Jews. So could you explain that? What was their true status?
The true status is that they were called out of their living space, and the more that they were oppressed, the more they spread out. And one of the things that here we introduce the concept of hate and fear. Egyptians came to dread the Israelites in number 12. There are other midrashic stories that say how as the people who were working became more and more oppressed and had to do more and more, that the women came out to feed them and would go back and forth, and so that they could rest. They interceded because they were seeing the fabric of their family disintegrate. And so the women were participating as supporting their husbands and their brothers out in the field. I think that here we have that we took out from here part of the Haggadah, although the Haggadah never mentions Moses, for real. And they made life bitter for them. We have that word, with the harsh labor at mortar and bricks and all sorts of tasks in the field. But we've heard things described as they were schlepping rocks from far away. Doesn't say that in the Torah.
Doesn't say schlepping? No.
It does not say schlepping. Does not. That's a midrashic Yiddish word. But that's how it's portrayed in movies and Hollywood. Because that's how we understand things to be in modern times. Ready to go on? Okay. All right. Gail Ferrioli has agreed in advance to read this section, because here we see the true development of character development literarily here. Go, Gail.
Okay. Sometime after that, when Moses had grown up, he went out to his kinsfolk and witnessed their labors. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his kinsmen. He turned this way and that, and seeing no one about, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When he went out the next day, he found two Hebrews fighting. So he said to the offender, "Why do you strike your fellow?" He retorted, "Who made you chief and ruler over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Moses was frightened and thought, "Then the matter is known." When Pharaoh learned of the matter, he sought to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh. He arrived in the land of Midian. Just a moment. Oh, thank you. And sat down beside the well.
Okay. This is a juicy part. This is where Moses grows up. And it says, when Moses had grown up, where had Moses been? What does it mean to be grown up?
Well, those are two questions. And I had thought up to this day that he had been in the palace, but then you brought up the idea a little while ago that he didn't stay, that he returned to his people. So I'm confused.
So one of the sources I have adds in, remember, anything that's added into what's not in text is midrash, which just enhances our understanding. And you can take it that it was man-made thought, not in Torah. But one of the sources from the Chumash Eitz Chaim said that that when Miriam arranged for Yocheved to be a wet nurse, she actually took him back to where the Jewish people lived. She didn't go live in the palace. That's one other form of the story. And so he got to know who he was. It's like, how does he know who he is? If he was, and so I think the rabbis had to explain, the scholars had to explain, how did he know he was even a Jew? How did he know he was a Hebrew? Why did he have compassion? Why did he feel compelled to take this action? So I think it helps to understand this part to say, when did he go back and return to the princess, the Pharaoh's daughter? He already had come to know who he was from living among his people, because he says he went in number 11, he went out to his kinfolk and witnessed their labors. If he had been sheltered in the palace, he wouldn't have known who he was.
True.
Okay. However, we might infer that when he came out to do this, he might not have been dressed anymore as a Hebrew. He might have been dressed as an Egyptian. And in fact, Moses' name is an Egyptian name.
There's an interesting alternative understanding to the so-called murder here. We read he turned this way and that, and seeing no one about, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And we usually assume he turned this way and that meaning he didn't want to get caught. But I've heard that interpreted as he turned this way and that, hoping he would see someone else who would intercede. Seeing no one about, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. It's a very different take on this, as it's not so much about Moses losing his temper and killing the Egyptian, as it just has a very different feel to it. So
I think it also shows Moses's character about looking for justice and understanding who he was, who he is, and who he probably would come to be. Okay, but that's part one. And then in part two, then he sees two of his kinsfolk fighting. So these are his people, and they're fighting with each other. And they said, who made you chief and ruler over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? He was found out. And that was the instigation for him to be able to leave Egypt and have more development as to who he would grow, the person he would grow into. I don't want to say grow up. There are many, many midrashim about this portion, about this section of the portion. If you want a really easy read, I suggest, let's see, I can't.
Alan, you muted yourself by accident.
you're still muted.
Good. Okay. Yep. Thank you. All right. So this is a very good book if you want an easy read, not to read through it, but when you get to a portion that you'd like to see some midrashim, legends of the Bible, it's a very old written book. It's still in print, but it's like from a long time ago. But I always find it useful.
Ellen, a question?
Yeah.
Is it possible just by reading the text without any outside support to know what's midrash and what is not? I mean, here we get into a question of how the Torah was compiled and edited and so forth and so on, but you're referring to elements of the story that are midrashim that were added later or interpreted. Is there any way of distinguishing in the accepted version that we read? Is there any way of distinguishing
Of course, when
what's original and what is not?
When you read Torah text, you read Torah text, and then you go, something's missing. and the missing parts are made up by people later to try to explain things that are not in text. So when you, for instance, when you get to the part of that Moses was slow of speech, a midrash was developed that said the Pharaoh got threatened. The Pharaoh got threatened and had a dream that Moses was going to take over the palace and overthrow him, and he put Moses to a test. This is not in the Torah text. And he brought him a plate of jewels and a plate of hot coals, and they said, if he touches the jewels, that's an indication that he's going to try to overthrow the Pharaoh. And if he touches the hot coals, I mean, this was, the Midrash says he was 2 years old. And if he touched the hot coals, then there was no threat. And the Midrash goes on to say that an angel came as Moses was reaching over to the jewels and forced his hand over to the coals. And he touched the coals. And if you touch something hot, what would you do?
Get burned.
You burn your finger and put it in your mouth. And Midrash explains Moses' speech impediment through this Midrashic story, that he touched the coals and everything was hot and burned his tongue, and therefore that was why. But that's not in text. That's something that people fill in between the lines to help understand on another level. It's just a story, and there are many, many, many of them. And so your question was, how do you know what was true and what wasn't? You go back to the Torah text.
Okay, so in the Torah text that we're reading, in the portion we're reading today, it refers to Moses seeing the fight and knowing that they were kinsmen. I never knew until today that he had been back with his people and therefore knew who was kinsman and who was not. So is this somewhere in this text earlier that he had?
The question is, when his mother when Yocheved was his wet nurse, the question is how long? The Torah text doesn't say.
Just as the age of weaning or something like that.
The age of weaning.
Yeah.
Which some people think is like the age of 3. That would be a traditional thing. So by the age of 3, do you know your neighbors?
No.
Do you know your mother?
Probably.
Have you been taught at the age of 3? Well, by the age of 3 in traditional things, at 3 in more modern traditions, that's when a child would be weaned and would have his first haircut and be able to say the Shema. So the Torah doesn't tell us, maybe the Torah doesn't feel that it's important to know.
Is it important to know that he went back to live among his people? And does the Torah tell us that?
I believe so. It just says that his mother raised him as a wet nurse until the age of weaning. And it doesn't define that.
And it doesn't define whether she left with him or left him in the palace.
Nope.
Okay.
It doesn't say that, but it helps to understand this section where it says that he saw his kinsmen. How did he know them? And I think it helps to give an explanation so that we can have trust in the Torah text. And I think that's the part of Midrash, to trust the Torah text. And listen, one of our jobs is to read the white spaces between the black letters. So because the Torah portion, any other questions before I go on to the end? So this song is a song that we sing at Yizkor. And because this book of the Torah isn't called Exodus, it's called Names, because that's the beginning. And we sing this song at Yizkor sometime. Each person has a name. We each have a name given by God and given by our father and mother. We each have a name by our stature and smile and given by our attire. We each have a name given by the hills and by the walls. We each have a name given by the stars and given by our friends. We each have a name given by our sins and given by our yearnings. We each have a name given by our enemies and given by love. We each have a name given by celebrations and given by our work. We each have a name given by the seasons and given by our blindness. We each have a name given by the sea and given by our death. And if we're talking about names, Moses had a name that was very meaningful, and we each have different facets of ourselves, and as character development happens, the name changes. So I just leave you with that thought on that song. That song is actually on YouTube in a bunch of places. So thank you for sharing. Thank you all for coming. It's always nice to see friends returning, and I hope that this is just you coming out of your hole, and Groundhog Day, you'll come out again many times before we can all be back in temple. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Yasher koach.
Yasher koach.
And to you too, Rebecca.
Yasher
Over to
koach.
you, Sandra Braun.
Thanks very much, Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen. It was beautiful discussion, and thanks, Rebecca. And yeah, it's a great analogy with the song, Ellen. Thank you for sharing. And yesterday at the service, we were talking about names, also during my devar, and how names are important, and it's a beautiful continuation, and the poetry is great. So we'll continue with Aleinu. If you're ready and able, please rise. Aleinu לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא שם נגי ארצות ולא שם ענו כביש פאות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו גהם וגורלנו כעול המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר בחיי אדוני למלך הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו this moment we turn our thoughts to people who have been taken from us in recent days. We remember Lonnie Perlman, brother of Alan Kroll, uncle of Kenneth Kroll. We remember Myrna Weinstein, wife of Samuel Weinstein and mother of Vicky Weinstein Feinfrack. Lillian Baker, grandmother of Candice Baker Light. David Shapiro, relative of Marlene Gordon. Natalie Carol Hessel Chekhov, mother of Laura Chekhov and Susan Chekhov Luzignan. And Catherine Steele, aunt of Abby Urban Rifkin. And we also remember those who passed in this season many years ago, and we observe Yahrzeit this morning. Jacob Altman, Carmela Ambrose, Jack Bell, Maurice Boyum, Kennard Goodman, Estelle Green, Frances Heimberg, Ruth Herman, Harold Kay, Joseph Kiva, Herbert Krause, Herbert Molzer, James Oitz, Gert Rallin, Mary Rudolph, Jeanette Schneider, Jack Schulman, Sidney Yates, Edwin Yanker, Bernard Zeldman. Anybody have names that you would like to add? Just unmute yourself.
Sima Basmel Yosef.
Brian Sicknick, who was killed during the rioting Wednesday.
In the Laban memory, we recite Kaddish Yatom, Yid Kadal v'Yid Kadash Shmei Rabbah, Belmadi v'Rach Hiruteh v'Yamrich B'chayechon ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבא מבורך לעולם עולמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבא מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרמיו, הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו אמן. May the source of peace bestow peace to all who mourn, and may we be a source of comfort to everybody and who are bereaved. Amen. Please be seated. Well, announcements. I'm gonna stop the share. Tonight we have Havdalah and games for all ages on Zoom. It's a very short Havdalah and different games on Zoom for those who attended last time. I think you enjoyed it. It is 5:30, just a half an hour activity. On Sunday, which is tomorrow, religious school at 9:30, and Rabbi Till will be teaching a class. She will be starting a 5-week survey, Genesis, starting with Genesis. It's a 5-week survey on the Torah. So the description all on the website, so you can look up. Tomorrow is the first class. And Torah Changing Club is at 10:30 tomorrow. On Tuesday, January 12th at 7 p.m., Women's Havurah and Men's Club have an event. Also, all the information and a link on the website. Religious school on Wednesday. Next Friday, we have Shabbat, observing MLK, and our guest speaker will be Dr. Rashid Muhammad. So please refer to all the events on our website and reserve the date for Danny Messing. I know most of us, or everybody, are very excited who know him, and hopefully we can pass this excitement to you. All the information on the website. You can listen to his recordings if you would like and learn about him. So we are looking forward to him. January 27th is the first appearance. Any other announcements?
Not an announcement, but as we were going, I thought of something else kind of important about names. I believe that I heard that the reason that the Israelites deserved redemption was that they didn't change their names in Egypt. They kept their names, so they didn't assimilate. Am I correct on that?
Yes. Yes, there is a midrash that they didn't change the names, and they kept the tradition, and that's why they were brought out of Egypt. Again, this is a midrash. That's why this is the explanation why the entire book of the second book of Torah is called Shmot, names. So why names are important. So thank you. Good point. So any other announcements? Okay, so let's lift the Kiddush cup and recite together Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Amen. Okay, so, and Hamotzi, hopefully everybody will have lunch after this. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. And we'll conclude with Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. A peace will come, right? And it surely enough will come to everyone. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Can I mute? And thanks for attending Shabbat. We had
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Shabbat shalom. You're
Thanks to
welcome.
everybody.
Hello.
Yeah. Have a
Bye-bye.
sunny day.
Alan, nobody talked to you today. Alan Skirker, Shabbat Shalom.
Alan Skorka, Shabbat Shalom.
You can't hide.
He's trying.
I'm not sure he hears you.
Lisa Altman, I love your background.
Yeah, yes, beautiful.
It's so good to see
I
everybody.
uploaded that when it was my son's bar mitzvah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
He was one of the first bar mitzvahs for Zoom for the temple. So we put this on the screen and people didn't even know he was in. But soon my second son will be starting bar mitzvah prep, I think. So I'll start getting him to attend Saturday morning services, hopefully, without too much problem.
That's good.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov, I hope to see you on tonight, maybe for Havdalah, short Havdalah, 5:30.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. Thanks for your participation.
Shalom.
Diane,
Shalom.
Yay.
being here.
Thank you.
The sun is out on my side.
Yes, everybody outside.
The sun is out.
That's only in the yellow zone.
Oh, come on, Ellen.
We're going to spread our sunshine into the orange zone, make it turn yellow.
Oh, are you in orange zone?
No, I'm in yellow.
Yellow, yeah. No,
Yellow,
these zones,
yellow.
they don't make sense. They don't make sense at all.
Well, you were at the meeting with Dr. Mendoza, who said that it was all skewed because the orange zone has a lot of schools, universities, hospitals, and nursing homes. So it looks different than just normal, whereas Pittsburgh doesn't.
Right.
And they have more at-risk groups, the people who are college age groups who go and drink together and socialize.
Right.
Us people who just kind of like sit in the kitchen and look out the window. We're yellow.
Well, yeah, and it's just funny that during December break we went to New York City. Like we drove from my sister to New York City to Rockefeller Center. There's so many people there. The ice rink is open, you know. And then we wanted to go to Rochester ice rink downtown, and it's closed. You know, it's just, how do you create logic, you know?
You don't. But
there's no logic. Like
New York City had their big sick time in April when they had Central Park had beds and tents, and then people left New York City. So maybe it just felt like New York City. Which
was a lot of people when we in Times Square, like Rockefeller Center, was a lot of police and a lot of people. Everybody was in masks. Every single person in mask.
But they had their big scare in the spring.
Right. So it's safe. Like I don't mind to go to Rochester downtown and ice skate with kids in the masks. I mean, I just don't know why they closed it, you know? So, yeah. And in Manhattan, they have all those restaurants outside with heat, and people like that look safe. They all open, you know. You sit outside with heaters, and it's warm.
But they're not used to cooking in New York City. They order out an omelet or 2 poached eggs. Like really, you do.
Really?
Yes, it's crazy.
So we took the kids to Empire State Building. It was no people there. Probably the best time to go. They were so ecstatic. They loved it. And, you know, it was like another family. That's it. It was empty.
See, the sun came out. We can see our shadows. That means we don't have to go back to sleep.
Right. I see sun come out. Ellen, sun. There is a sunshine on you, Ellen.
Yes, I know. I'm sitting by the kitchen window.
It's a good walk today. Well, thank you so much, Ellen. Beautiful Torah study. And
It was beautiful, Ellen. Thank you.
yes, we all enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed it. I hope now you know that some things are real and some things are midrash, and that the Torah doesn't tell us too much about Moses, really. Not enough.
I think it's interesting. The
Very
whole thing, the story, it was great.
Who would
Yeah.
give a child a thing of hot coals, really?
Okay, ladies. Have a good
Bye.
day.
Shabbat
Be
shalom.
well.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Stay safe.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you, Ellen, again.